'Cause Stone Cold said so.
Art,
Yes, Andy.
I'm going to describe you now as a wrestling dabbler.
Okay.
I'm not willing to describe you as a wrestling enthusiast, but I know you know a bit about the sport.
Fair. I'll say fair.
Art, question for you. Who is your favorite wrestler and why? If you can't pick one, maybe just say a couple you like.
Andy, let me stop you right there. Easy, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Done. Not only was he one of the greatest technical wrestlers,
Austin, he got it! The Steiner!
greatest promos ever.
Get that piece of crap out of my ring!
I mean, comedic. Just like dramatic.
He's gonna crash him in party!
I mean, off the cuff stuff. He initiated the whole Attitude Era.
Austin Era has begun!
So some of the greatest stunts of all time.
Oh! Hey! Austin with a stunner on Goldberg now!
Very, very few wrestlers can you just play 1 second of his theme song, The Glass Shattering, and instantly the crowd will pop so hard.
And there he is! There's Stone Cold! And the deal is Stone Cold! Oh, he's talking!
Stone Cold is just number one by far.
Art, another question for you.
Yeah.
Where were you? Specifically on April 5th, 2009.
What an Alan Jackson reference.
Did you happen to be in Houston at NRG Stadium?
Wow.
Because Art, listeners, on that date, that location hosted WrestleMania 25, the premier annual event produced by World Wrestling Entertainment, the USA's premier professional wrestling outfit. Art.
Yeah.
Did you know that some people consider the greatest match in professional wrestling history to be the WrestleMania 25 matchup between The Undertaker and Mr. WrestleMania himself, Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid?
It's a great match.
Well, they do, Art.
Okay.
In the match, The Undertaker is driven to near madness like a forgetful ATM user, trying pin after pin, only to see the Heartbreak Kid break free and continue the match. Finally, Shawn Michaels launches off the turnbuckle, only to be caught midair and upside down by The Undertaker, who promptly executes a tombstone piledriver and pins HBK for good. Undertaker moves to 17-0 at WrestleMania, and Mr. WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels, notches another match for the ages.
Woo! Yeah! What a match, baby! Awesome match. Not disputing that, Andy. One thing to note about that match, and indeed almost all professional wrestling, is that it's scripted. That's right. As thrilling as this match was, the outcome was already predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
The action, a display of complex choreography, executed expertly by these skilled performers. Though wrestlers possess exceptional physical gifts, thank you, Andy, and wrestlers like The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels are experts in their craft, match results are all part of written storylines. Professional wrestlers, their injuries are real, are like hybrids between stuntmen and live theater actors.
Oh, hell yeah. It's like Sir Laurence Olivier riding a big old motorcycle or hog through a plate glass window in a hail of gunfire, baby.
Andy, that's exactly right. Thank you. Now you're getting it, you stupid idiot.
Oh,
Wow, I'm a heel. I'm a
yeah,
heel in
you're-
this script.
you are a heel.
See, Andy and listeners, professional wrestlers live by the code known as kayfabe. Kayfabe is basically the portrayal of scripted events as being true. It's the way that professional wrestling makes its fiction seem like fact. Professional wrestling has basically always been a work of fiction. For decades, kayfabe was fiercely protected. Wrestlers were asked to maintain character even outside the ring. Scripted rivals were forbidden from traveling to matches together or even being seen in public with each other, all in the name of preserving the faux reality portrayed in the ring. This begs the question, though. If wrestling is so protective of kayfabe, how do we even know about it, Andy?
Wow, I am so glad you asked that question, Art. Listeners, just to prove that Art and I are on the up and up, let me rephrase that without the kayfabe. I'm so glad you read that question from the script that I wrote.
Whoa.
Whoa. And the curtain is down. Essentially, Art, though, there was always speculation that professional wrestling was scripted. Despite the suspicions, folks in the wrestling business never acknowledged kayfabe until they had to. In 1989, Vince McMahon, owner of the WWE, testified before the New Jersey State Senate. McMahon was testifying to urge the senators to lift the athletic regulations to which pro wrestling was beholden at the time. In his testimony, McMahon admitted that wrestling was not competitive. The bill passed and sports entertainment was born. What this means, though, is that in order to maintain kayfabe, pro wrestling allowed itself to be subjected to regulations and taxes designed to apply to bona fide athletic contests, and did so for years. Wrestling was willing to bear expenses to attempt to convince the public that their product was a genuine competition. Is it possible that other sports are similar to pre-1989 pro wrestling, attempting to maintain airtight kayfabe, all the while scripting the on-field or on-court action?
Widespread scripting of action by any major athletic league has not been proven, but some things have come close. In 2015, 7 officials of the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. I got a lot of different accents
in that one.
It covers a wide range.
The true global sampling there.
Also known as FIFA, were arrested under charges of money laundering, fraud, and bribery. FIFA is the international governing body of soccer, or, as we like to call it, international football, aka footy. The charges stem from an investigation into collusion between officials of CONMEBOL. Right? What do you think? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, CONMEBOL.
CONMEBOL and CONCACAF.
Yeah. CONCACAF.
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 CONCACAF
Is what I would say.
CONCACAF.
CONCACAF.
I like it more throaty.
Yeah.
I like a more throaty pronunciation. Which are international football organizations in the Americas and sports marketing executives influencing the issuance of marketing and media rights. There were also allegations that illegal payments were used to influence the host site selection process for the World Cup, the premier international football tournament. So while the FIFA situation doesn't directly point to FIFA or any other international football body scripting the action on the field, it does evidence that money can play a corrupting influence in sport. In this case, with some of the more administrative aspects, but where does the influence of money end? Isn't it possible that money could encourage malfeasance in sporting contests, Andy?
Yes, Art, and it has. Let me tell you a little tale about a sport known as basketball.
I've heard of it.
The American Professional League is known as the NBA, the National Basketball Association. The situation: NBA referee Tim Donaghy is hanging out at the country club with a high school friend named Jack Concannon. They're golfing buddies and frequently gamble together. Concannon's bookie is a guy named Peter Rhino Ruggieri, who also golfed with the guys. Donaghy and Concannon start betting on professional American football games together based on Rhino's system for picking games. Eventually, in 2003, Donaghy and Concannon start to bet on NBA games. In fact, they decide to bet on the games Donaghy is refereeing. A sports betting syndicate of which Rhino was a part was booking the bets for Jack Concannon. The betting syndicate, by the way, was run by a group of people who, like Rhino, all had animal nicknames, leading some to call them, not very creatively, the Animals.
Very cool.
Rhino noticed that Jack was betting larger amounts on certain NBA games. Rhino figured out that Concannon was betting bigger on little Tommy Donaghy's games and winning even bigger. The Animals started betting on Donaghy's games, but their syndicate broke up in 2004. Now on their own, at least one of the Animals continued to bet on Donaghy's games. That animal, James Baba Batista. And by the way, listeners, animal noise onomatopoeia nicknames count as animal nicknames. Okay?
We are, do you know?
Okay?
Okay.
Anyway, Baba Batista contacts a friend of Donaghy's in 2006 to set up a meeting. Baba was worried that the gambling world had become wise to the Donaghy scheme and that the nice thing they had could evaporate. Baba offered Donaghy to pick the games he refereed, and if Donaghy's pick covered the spread, Donaghy would get a sum of money for his services. In the meantime, FBI agents covering the Gambino crime family got a tip from one of their informants about how much money illegal wagers on Donaghy's games were making the mafia. By mid-2007, the scheme was known to the NBA, and Donaghy resigned in July of 2007. In 2008, Donaghy was sentenced to 15 months in prison for his part in the scheme. Prior to sentencing, Donaghy alleged malfeasance by other referees and indeed the NBA itself. Among other things, Donaghy claimed that Game 6 of the 2002 Western Conference Finals was fixed because the NBA wanted to add another game to the series. I know. A New York Post story that ran in July 2007 precluded any additional FBI investigation into Donaghy's claims, and post hoc investigations determined that Donaghy never fixed a game he officiated. Gamblers disagree, though, saying it was obvious that Donaghy was influencing the outcome of the games on which he had money.
Andy, the Tim Donaghy case is definitely interesting, but it is not even close to the OG betting scandal in pro sports. I am, of course, referring to my, breaking kayfabe here, beloved Chicago White Sox. We'll get into it.
It's complicated.
And the infamous 1919 Black Sox scandal. In the mid to late 1910s, the White Sox were one of the best baseball concerns going, Andy.
Yeah.
They won the 1917 World Series, but despite this fact, legendary White Sox owner Charles Comiskey, of which the park was named after,
Yes.
for a while, was disliked by the team. Comiskey was thought to be underpaying his players, despite the fact that the White Sox had the largest team payroll in 1919. Keep this in mind, though, listeners. This was before the Baseball Players Union and collective bargaining. So underpaying players was institutionalized. Neat. Players didn't make much money, and without protections in place for their continued employment, it was easy for gamblers to find players willing to join a scheme for a nice payday. And I'm not talking about a peanut-covered caramel nougat candy bar that I don't like.
Oh, what?
I don't like them.
Payday is an amazing candy bar.
I haven't had one in a long time because I'm allergic to peanuts in some ways. We'll get into it.
Okay.
Chick Gandil was the brains of the operation and was responsible for recruiting the White Sox players who joined in the fix. The basic plan was that the players would conspire to lose games in the World Series and, after each successful loss, would receive a payment from the gamblers. Word got out to other gamblers that the series might be rigged, though, and a lot of action started going to the White Sox opponent, the Cincinnati Reds. This moved the line, making the whole scheme less profitable than planned. Payments didn't come to the White Sox players as expected. So after Game 5, the conspirators changed the conspiracy in order to get back at the gamblers. The White Sox won the next 2 games of the series, inciting the gamblers to make threats against players and their families. Threats of violence, Andy, that is. Not threats of passion or kindness or lovemaking.
Threats of passion.
Yeah.
Oh, I swear I'm going to be so passionate about model airplane construction.
Threats of violence. The White Sox lost Game 8, which cost them the World Series. The players involved in the scheme did finally receive their money, anywhere from $5,000 to $35,000, which I imagine was quite a lot back then.
Decent sum. Well, Art, these are some nice historical examples, but what about modern day? How about the current ongoing National Football League season?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. If you don't know, listeners, the NFL is the Professional American Football League. What are we talking about here exactly? Well, of course, we're talking about Antonio Brown.
Mr. Big Podcast.
Is that what he calls himself?
Maybe now.
Okay. Antonio Brown was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2010 and quickly became a standout wide receiver for the team. Brown is a 7-time Pro Bowler, twice led the NFL in receptions and receiving yards, and led the league in touchdowns once. Despite this on-field success, the Steelers traded Brown in March of 2019 to the Oakland Raiders. After being fined by the Raiders for a number of infractions, Brown eventually demanded to be released from the Raiders after the team voided guaranteed money in his contract. The Raiders obliged and released him on September 7, 2019. Also on September 7, 2019, Reggie Bush, current sportscaster and former NFL player, tweeted that if the New England Patriots sign Brown, the whole NFL is rigged. Well, guess what happened? Later on September 7th, 2019, Antonio Brown signed a 1-year contract with the New England Patriots.
Oh!
So what's the big deal with the Patriots? Well, the New England Patriots are in the midst of perhaps the greatest dynasty ever in professional American football and maybe in all of American sport. Arguably. The team has won 6 Super Bowls since 2001. The Super Bowl, by the way, is the NFL's championship game. Basically, the Patriots are one of the NFL's most successful and powerful clubs. Also, they had an interest in trading for Brown when he was leaving Pittsburgh, but the Steelers did not want to trade him to a major rival like the Patriots. Additionally, it was revealed that Brown engaged a social media consultant to help him get out of his contract with the Raiders. But that's not all, folks. This story gets stranger still. Shortly after joining the Patriots, Brown's former personal trainer accused him of rape. Brown's former doctor also accused Brown of farting in his face multiple times and not paying his doctor bills. Brown has since been released from the Patriots and is, as of this recording, not currently on the roster of any NFL team.
Also, we weren't joking about the farting in his face. You can Google that. He did that.
Yeah.
Allegedly. The Brown and Donaghy cases both have allegations of professional sports leagues scripting action on the court or field or in some way manipulating the outcomes of contests. Let's dive into the rationale put forth by those people who believe that professional sports are indeed rigged. These points are taken from the work of Brian Tuohy. Yeah, Tuohy. Author of the books The Fix Is In and The Fix Is Still In. The sequel, respectively.
The fix is in 2, the fix is still in.
Yes. First, professional sports are actually businesses. Entertainment businesses, to be exact. Sports entertainment? Where have we heard that before? That's right, with professional wrestling. Tuohy suggests that the real business of all major sports is entertainment. And so leagues will strive to entertain their audience above all, even if it means making up storylines and compromising competitiveness. Wouldn't individual teams object to losing games just to satisfy a league-created storyline? Why would teams work so hard over the course of the year and just to participate in such a scheme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tuohy suggests that it's because the 4 major sporting leagues in the USA, the NFL, the MLB, and the NBA, and the National Hockey League, or NHL, all have drafts and revenue sharing, with some possessing antitrust law exemptions. As the FIFA scandal illustrates, media rights for major sporting events are quite lucrative. These major leagues all have deals in place where revenue generated from media sources is distributed amongst some or all of the teams in the league. The same is true with ticket sales. Essentially, all teams in the league benefit when the league does well. So why not humble your team for the betterment of the league? Legally speaking, there aren't any laws that prohibit a sports league from predetermining its contests. There are laws on the books that were enacted in the wake of the 1950s quiz show scandal. Andy?
Oh!
That was a hot one.
Spicy.
where it was revealed that some television game shows were rigged. The quiz show laws really only govern the rigging of intellectual contests, not physical ones. So arguably, sports are excluded from these rules. TUI further cites as evidence that any ticket you purchase to see a sporting event is only a license to see that event. The ticket in no way guarantees a fair contest or anything similar. Basically, as consumers, professional sports leagues can script the action on one hand and lie to us about the authenticity on the other. And we lack any real legal recourse.
So what's the evidence that this is actually happening? Truthfully, it's mostly speculation. Outside of the instances we've shared here and other situations where people see incongruities, there's a lack of hard evidence. According to former gambler and current author of the book, No Gray Areas, Joe Gagliano, sports are hard to fix from the outside. Most team sports are challenging because of the number of players involved. Incentives in the most prominent sports are different now as well, reducing the effectiveness of traditional gambling techniques. One sport that Gagliano sees as a prime target for corruption is UFC. Gagliano says that fighters are paid poorly and are likely to have short professional careers. If they have the chance to make a big score while they can, they might be inclined to take it. One thing is for sure, with the recent reduction in regulation around sports betting in the USA, the major sports leagues could soon find themselves awash in gambling money, possibly influencing the outcomes of entire seasons' worth of action. Maybe, though, gambling was never the problem all along. Maybe the real villains in this case are the sports leagues who provide the athletic products we love to consume. Just maybe all the thrilling moments and tremendous heartbreaks were just manufactured to keep us all tuned in.